Hey everybody, this is Caleb. Welcome to the Traditional Domestic Discipline Substack and welcome to the Caleb and Aria podcast. I am Caleb and I have my lovely co-host with me today, Aria. Aria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing pretty good, doing pretty good. As you know, I am working on some health issues here and trying to wean myself off of a blood pressure medication that I've been on for a number of years. And so I'm going through some side effects of that. It's a beta blocker, so you get a lot of like crazy side effects when you're trying to come off of beta blockers, especially when you've been on them as long as I have. So it just is what it is, but I'm doing okay. What's been going on in your life this week?
Oh, this week's been pretty mundane. Finally was able to get a dryer that, from my
Hey, Aria, you're breaking up.
noise.
You're breaking up.
Is that better?
I don't know. Repeat what you just said.
Off making noise. Okay. I'm sorry. We were finally able to get a new dryer. About 3 months ago, our dryer started making this awful squeaking noise, and we tried to repair it ourselves, but to no avail. And then with supply issues, we had to wait to be able to get delivery. So finally, that is taken care of, and I don't have to listen to this awful noise all day long. And so that's kind of been the highlight of my week. I lead a very exciting life.
Your old dryer was pretty bad?
Oh, yeah, it was awful. We tried changing the belt because we thought it was what was causing the squeaking. We changed the belt, and it actually made it worse.
Really?
And so we just decided at that point that it wasn't worth, because the next step would have been to change out the motor. And my husband, he's great. He's not a handyman. And so it would have been difficult. It would have been stressful, and it probably wouldn't have worked all that well. It was a pretty low-end dryer, so.
Well, so I have to ask the question that everybody actually wants to know. Have you kept your behind safe this week?
Of course.
Good job. Not even once. You've been totally safe this week. That's very, very cool. Except for, I'm sure, your maintenance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But your maintenance, I'm sure, this week went way better than it went last week, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys.
Yeah, getting back on schedule has definitely helped.
All right. Well, today we're going to be discussing the post-spanking aspect of domestic discipline, what's widely known as aftercare. And for those of you who don't know, those of you who are new to the domestic discipline lifestyle or are curious about it, domestic discipline is more than just like spanking, right? When you give a woman, your wife, your girlfriend, a punishment spanking, that's not where it ends. Generally, if you're doing discipline right, the spanking will be followed up by a period of maybe letting her calm down from the pain of it, maybe some corner time. But after that, we get into what's called aftercare, which is where you reconnect with your significant other after the discipline. I'm just going to give you different people do it different ways, but I'm just going to give my listeners a sort of cookie cutter version of aftercare here. So you're a wife. You've just been spanked for an infraction. After that, your husband stands you up, gives you a big hug, sits you in his lap, and you talk. You talk about how you're going to improve your behavior, but you also talk about reassuring her that she is forgiven, that she's an amazing girl, that you feel so lucky to have her in your life. And basically, make sure she understands what she did, but at the same time sort of shower her with compliments so that she knows that she is valued. Because punishment without, I guess you could say softness, is cruelty. Okay, punishment should always be followed by some kind of forgiveness and love and hugs and all that sort of stuff. So, did I explain that correctly in your mind, Aria?
Yes, I think you did a great job of explaining that. And like you said, every couple will have their own version of what that looks like for them. But the basic tenets of that coming together and reconnecting is what's important.
Yeah, and I mean, it almost always involves like long hugs and just really just soft talking to each other for, it could be for like an hour after that. It depends on what's going on, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like probably the most important part of the whole lifestyle. Because without it, you're just gonna, it's just punishment without redemption. And
Well, it's the relationship building aspect.
yeah, I mean, it helps you to reconnect after, you're angry at her for whatever she did. She's angry at you for punishing her, and this is your way of, rekindling and just reconnecting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is your do you have a particular aftercare ritual, or do you do different things on different days, or like how do you guys work it?
Um, Typically, I'm trying to think because usually after a spanking, we have a shed in our back that we have set up for the purpose of this because we have a daughter who's at the age that we can't always rely on her sleep schedule to take care of discipline, and we're very aware to not expose her to any of the sounds of discipline
Right.
taking place. And so what's unique is that we don't really have a bed in here. We have a like a chaise lounger, and so my husband will, after a spanking, he will be sitting down and I will kneel in front of him, and I'll just like rest my head either on his lap or on his shoulder, in his chest, and he will just like touch my hair while we talk. And that's typically what we do, is we just talk and we reconnect physically, and we just come back together in that way.
That's really cool. And I think a lot of the reasons that some people who try DD, the ones that give up on it for after like a short while, it's because they don't include the aftercare aspect. Maybe nobody told them about it or whatever, but they just kind of spank and leave it at that, and that's no good for anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that most people that when they start to include discipline, their only real their only real like idea of what discipline is maybe what they've experienced in childhood, and that usually and typically is not a reflection of what domestic discipline should be.
Yeah, no,
If that makes sense.
no, you're absolutely right. Now, why did you, like, when you first started, did you have aftercare like right away, or did you kind of make the mistake of not using it, or what was your situation?
Well, the way we transitioned into domestic discipline is we knew we wanted a power differential relationship. And when I started doing research on that and trying to find a system and a lifestyle that really fit us, we started going down the BDSM rabbit hole.
Right.
And before I really was like, you know what, domestic discipline fits us better. And if you go down that rabbit hole, you'll talk a lot than on the domestic discipline side of information. And so we really had a good understanding of the need for aftercare and what that could look like. And so I feel like we did a pretty good job from the beginning of understanding that need to reconcile and reconnect.
Now, I would like you, if it's not too personal, I would like you to somewhat describe your first aftercare session to me. I mean, you don't have to describe like sexual stuff, obviously, but um, describe your first aftercare session to me, and describe sort of how it made you feel, and did it do the trick, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, like, well, how did you feel after that first major aftercare session was over, and what happened during the aftercare anyway? Was it basically you were just sitting on his lap, head and shoulder type of thing, like you just said, and then?
So, the very first time we were in a different house because we move a lot. And so at that point, we were in our bedroom. And we had kind of gone into it deciding that we weren't going to include anything sexual into the aftercare. That's obviously personal preference, and every couple will have different ideas about whether or not that's appropriate for them.
Right.
And so immediately after, I believe that, like, we hugged, he talked to me, and then I believe, if I'm thinking correctly, we just laid in bed and cuddled for a while. And that was great. And it really helped to kind of put a period at the end of that sentence, right? Have that finality, have that ending, and say, this is over, and we're going to start fresh with a clean slate. And, he definitely, and always does, reemphasize the forgiveness aspect. Like, you're forgiven. I'm not thinking, it's not in my mind anymore. Because my husband's really good, and I don't know how he got this way. And when he listens to this, he'll probably laugh at that statement. But he's really good about not getting angry and not holding anger. And so typically he's not disciplining me from a place of, she did this thing and it made me angry. He's disciplining me from a place of, she broke a rule and that is really disappointing. So, which obviously doesn't feel any better on my end. I don't want to disappoint him either. And so to know that, hey, I'm forgiven for that. He's not holding that disappointment any longer. The punishment has been dealt, and now we can move forward with a fresh perspective.
Now, are you somebody who has to have the aftercare right away, or can it sometimes happen later in the evening as long as it happens? Like, for example, like, some people, they might have a situation where, the husband spanks the wife or whatever, but things need to be done right after. Like, maybe dishes need to be done, kids need to be winded down and put to bed or whatever. So aftercare can't happen right that moment, but it does happen later that evening. Are you one of those people that you think aftercare should happen right after no matter what? Or are you one of those, like, it can wait as long as it actually happens?
I think that's one of the things that, unfortunately, you have to kind of suss through on your own to figure out what works for you. For myself, I would prefer to put off the discipline until aftercare can happen. So, if something needs to happen right away, do something like corner time with the understanding that a spanking will happen later. Because for me, I really do need that aftercare immediately after.
Okay.
And the emotional process that I go through, I don't think that I would be able to function in a productive way in our relationship for things that have to happen in a certain way. So let's say, hypothetically, if we're getting ready to go somewhere and I get mouthy and my husband decides, what, that's enough, you're going to be punished for this, I would not be able to be punished and then go to our our obligation, whatever that is. Um, and be able to function within that without people knowing that something was really wrong with me. And so for me, I would prefer if, in that situation, if my husband pulled me aside and gave me a stern talking to and was like, when we get back, you're going to be punished for this. That would be more productive for me personally, because I really do need that aftercare to happen.
Now, do you use corner time? Do you and your husband use that, or?
Yes.
Do you use that for post-punishment, pre-punishment, or both?
Both.
Okay. What do you think? Like, do you consider corner time to be part of aftercare, or do you think that's just still part of the punishment aspect of it, or do you think it's a little bit of both? My personal opinion is that it's both. It's both still a punishment, but it's kind of aftercare too. It's like a transition to aftercare in my mind. But how do you see it?
I like the word transition there because I don't think that corner time in and of itself can act as aftercare, but it definitely helps the transition into aftercare.
It gets your brain ready for it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not necessarily ready for a ton of aftercare right after the spanking, right? Because you're just in super excited mode.
Right.
I mean, some quick aftercare, like a hug right away or something, but you need like a few moments to calm down, and that's kind of where the corner time comes in, if you ask me. How long do you usually get like a post spanking corner time?
I don't have a good concept of time, but not long. Probably 5 minutes, 10 at most.
What is usually running through your mind in that post spanking corner time? Huh.
It's hard to put into words. It really is, because
there has to be a part of you that wants to kill your husband. I mean, that's just natural self-defense.
I don't know if I've ever felt that way, to be honest. Like, that's just so outside of who I am. I really do try to, if I can put any conscious thought into it, then I'm probably first just focusing on how I am physically feeling, and then I go through a process of just trying to slow my breathing and kind of come back into my body, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just coming back into the awareness of, all of that. And then if I have any conscious thought, it's really trying to think about, what I did wasn't worth it. This, I really shouldn't have done that. And kind of preparing myself to hear, like, really preparing myself not only to hear what my husband has to say as far as offering forgiveness and telling me what I need to do better in the future, but also just preparing myself in a way to just fully accept my punishment.
Yeah.
So that it can be productive.
Well, that's pre-spanking corner time, though, that you're talking about right now, right?
Oh, no, I do that after, too.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay, so I got my mind messed up about that. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
I haven't stood in a corner for a really long time.
I'm sure you haven't.
But I'm trying to remember what it is. I just remember mostly being bored because, I was a kid and I, wanted to play.
I go through that pre-punishment where I'm just like, this is pointless, this is stupid, why am I standing here? And then I really have to refocus my thought process and be like, okay, and really the purpose behind it, because I do have that initial gut reaction of like, this is so dumb. What's the point of this?
You know what just ran across my mind? This is kind of off subject, but Did your parents ever do a punishment with you where it was like a 10 or 15-minute punishment where they just basically made you sit right next to them on a couch and not move for like 10 minutes? Um,
Mm,
my
no.
my parents used to do that, and my dad really liked Star Trek, and he really liked cowboy movies, right? So every time I was getting one of those punishments where I had to sit still next to my dad for 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, he would be playing Star Trek or some sort of cowboy movie, like a John Wayne movie. I hate Star Trek and I hate cowboy movies to this day. So those punishments worked. Uh,
Yeah.
the funny thing is, almost everybody I know either likes one or the two, right? But I can't stand either. You can somewhat get me to watch a cowboy movie every once in a great while, but I won't even mess with Star Trek. It's not going to happen. But by the way, you uploaded some really, really good stuff today about getting started in domestic discipline. Why don't you tell our listeners about that?
So I am starting a segment where once, maybe even twice a week, I will pull a question from the archives of my Q&As that I hold over on Instagram. My Instagram account is in my proper place with a period between each word. And every week I hold a Q&A, and so I have started going back through my archives, and I'll pull a question, and then I'll just offer like an audio response. So this week I talked all about setting up rules in the beginning of your domestic discipline, whether that's a new relationship or a introducing domestic discipline into an already established relationship, and how to set up rules so that you don't get overwhelmed and you have a successful transition into the dynamic.
And it was really good stuff. I thought you did a really good job of explaining yourself, and you were so clear and concise, and you really didn't leave a whole lot of room for people to be confused about what you're saying. So my listeners, if you guys checked it out, it's only like 8 or 10 minutes long, and Aria does a great job of explaining herself. And you've got more content coming, right, Aria?
Yes, so I have, like I said, I have over a year worth of weekly Q&As, and I'm just going to go back through my archives and pull questions I think will make good little mini episodes. And like you said, they're only 8 to 10 minutes long, so they're really quick listens, but hopefully they offer some good information.
And you're going to be offering us some written content in the near future, from what I understand.
Yeah, so right now my plan is to just kind of write out the response that I give through the audio and offer that written as well. But then I will be working on some things that are just written.
Guys, a lot of great stuff coming from Aria. It's not just me. It's Aria is really making this site. You're starting to become like the queen of domestic discipline, and Radha is kind of already known as the queen of domestic discipline. You know who Radha is, right?
Yes.
So because of this, I can't figure out who the real queen of domestic discipline is anymore. So you're going to have to help me with this. How about we set up a boxing match between you two? 9 rounds. Whoever wins is the official queen of domestic discipline. Now, you'd have to have it in a neutral state like Tennessee, because you're in Texas and she's in Florida. So
Okay.
so we do this in Nashville with all the country music stars, and they'll be there, and
That would be something to see. For
celebrity
sure,
judges are going to be there. Simon Cowell, the whole deal.
Oh, wouldn't that be a sight? I don't know. She's a pretty tough broad. I don't think I'd win that one.
But I know you have great respect for Aria. I'm sorry, Aria. You have great respect for Radha too, and I'm really looking forward to. I reached out to her about doing an interview with you, and she said she'd get back to me in like a couple weeks or whatever. So I'm looking forward to the day when you two bounce off each other. It's going to be some awesome stuff. But when you were talking about getting started with domestic discipline and how to get started with it, you know what domestic discipline really helps with? Something that a lot of people in the DD community need, which is personal health and nutrition. And so we are going to be spending the next part of this podcast talking about personal health and nutrition. Now, for my listeners, most of our podcasts are going to cover a DD subject and a non-DD subject. And the reason for that is because I, like you, get bored of talking about DD nonstop. And I feel like we need to build real community in the domestic discipline community. And it's going to be impossible if all we talk about is DD all the time, right? It's going to be impossible just to develop close friendships based on that. We don't need DD people only talking about DD things. We need DD people talking about a lot of things. You'd agree with that, right, Aria?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and Aria has a lot more to offer too than just, I got spanked last week. I mean, this is a smart girl. She has more to offer, and she's going to talk about more than just DD too. She's going to talk about a lot of DD, just like I am. But we have more to offer beyond that. Believe it or not, we have other thoughts and other opinions and feelings and interests, and we're going to share all of those with you, and we hope to build a really cool community doing so. Now, that said, health. Aria, you know what my story is. About 2 years ago, I was 500 pounds. And I've weaned myself down to about 365 now. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I just didn't want to interrupt.
No,
that's awesome.
And I did it the old-fashioned way, the simplest way, but the old-fashioned way. And the way I did it doesn't lose you weight quickly, but it loses you weight in the most healthful way possible. People talk about these low-carb diets, these low-salt diets, and all this. All I did was cut additives and preservatives out of my system. So, and especially processed sugar. So basically my rule is when I go to the grocery store, I read the ingredients list on anything I'm going to buy. If it says anything except the main ingredient and salt and water, I don't buy it. So I don't put any additives in my system. And because of that, my health has made an amazing turnaround. Not only have I lost 135 pounds now, close to 140, but I had problems with my blood flow in my left leg. My left leg used to actually be both golden brown because the blood flow was partially cut off. And now it's back to its normal color. And I've overcome so many other ailments that I've had that I just won't get into on here, but I've made a 100% turnaround just on that. And so, a lot of people in the DD community, I know this from being on the DD blogs and stuff, a lot of people struggle with health and weight and stuff like that. And so that's my advice to them. But Aria, I know that you are starting a health journey yourself. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So I was going to say it's not exclusive to the DD community. I mean, it's just a societal problem, really. And it's becoming, even more than that, it's becoming a worldwide problem. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with low-carb diets or keto or vegetarian or any of those things, as long as it's a sustainable choice for you and it's a way that you can eat for the rest of your life. The problem with diets is that people see it as a quick fix and then they go off of it. And I think that if you look at everything that is out there, we can see that the common denominators are that you should avoid processed sugars and you should avoid processed foods.
Yep.
And so if you do those things and you do nothing else, you're going to see improvements like you did. So my own journey with this is I've always somewhat struggled with my weight. Now I look back at pictures and I think that my struggles were slightly overblown when I was a teenager. To be completely honest, I was actually a pretty healthy weight then. But really, after I had my daughter, I just really didn't bounce back. I don't know if something happened hormonally or just to my metabolism, but after having my daughter, I started to slowly just gain weight. And the highest I've ever been is about 270. I'm at around 250 right now. And I'm obviously not happy with that. going to try to continue to lose weight. And really what I'm doing is I'm going the old-fashioned counting calories route and trying to eat food that I know is nutritionally sound and as least processed as possible that fits within our lifestyle. I'm not ready to kind of give up all convenience quite yet, but definitely looking to eat more whole foods with less processed ingredients and less processed overall.
Well, I started out slow too when I knew I just had to change. I didn't change everything at once. The first thing I did was quit all processed sugar, right? But I was still eating my gas station cheeseburgers and whatnot, right? But the more processed sugar faded into the background and the longer I went without it, the less tempted I was by these other processed foods like these gas station cheeseburgers and gas station pizzas and stuff. So it took me probably about a month to get into my full diet that I am now. But I used to love those tornadoes. You know what tornadoes are?
No.
They're like little skinny burritos that they sell at these gas stations up here.
Okay.
And you got your different flavors like meat and cheese, pork and whatever, you know what I mean? But I used to love those, and I used to love gas station food, and I used to love pizza rolls. I could eat 2 bags of pizza rolls in one night without a problem. Put them in the microwave, put some shredded cheese on them. I should probably stop talking, but anyway. I lived on microwave food and gas station food for like a really long time. But when I first got rid of processed sugar, now getting rid of processed sugar was easy for me, and I'm going to teach you a little trick here. Have you gotten processed sugar out of your life yet, or are you still working on it?
Oh no, I'm still working on it. I lean more towards the sweets than the savory for sure.
Okay, so this is what got me through my processed sugar phase and got me through the temptation. Every single time that I had a craving for processed sugar, and it was like a big one, I took a spoonful of honey. That's it. And honey is real sugar. It's very healthy for you. It doesn't mess you. It does good things in your body instead of the bad things that processed sugar does. But it takes away your sweets cravings. So when you've got those cravings for sweets, honey is going to satisfy you in that regard. And at first I was taking like 12 spoonfuls of honey a day, but after a few weeks I was down to like 3. And 3 spoonfuls a day is about where I'm at today, So you're going to be taking a lot of it at first, and you probably won't sleep well because too much sugar in your system. But you're not going to sleep well when you're first coming off of processed sugar anyway. It's just your whole body chemistry changes. Here's what people don't know. Your body recognizes processed sugar as an intruder, as something that's not supposed to be there. The same way it recognizes, a virus, like whether it's COVID or whether it's the flu or whatever. So your immune system actually mounts a defense when you put processed sugar into your system. This is the very... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, which is why people that have a diet that's high in processed sugar and processed foods in general have a weakened immune system, and they're more susceptible to getting sick.
Well, they stay sick longer is the main thing, and the reason they stay sick longer is because, like I said, your immune system reacts to sugar. It sees sugar as an invader. It sees it as a virus, right? So let's say, and I don't know exactly how the immune system is made, but let's say that your immune system is made up of 6 different, but we're going to use a military analogy here, 6 different Marine brigades, right? So Marine brigades, platoons, whatever you call them, like groups of Marines, right? So your immune system is made up of 6 different Marine stations, and the Marines in your system fight off, diseases and everything. Well, if you've got 6 of those, and those are the 6 Marine brigades, and those are the brigades that make up your immune system. What happens is when you consume processed sugar, especially on a daily basis, 3 of those Marine brigades are always busy fighting off that processed sugar. So when you get a real virus, only half of your immune system can respond to it because the other half of your immune system is busy fighting off the preservatives and sugar you're putting into it. So the reason people who eat a natural diet don't stay sick as long is because when a virus like COVID or the flu or whatever enters into them, their entire immune system can mount a defense because it's not busy fighting off other things. And that's the whole thing about sugar and like preservatives and all preservatives and additives are kind of like your body recognizes them as an invader. But it's especially true with processed sugar. Processed sugar is the worst thing that you can possibly put into your system. The only thing worse than processed sugar is the sugar substitutes, like diet cookies and diet, candy bars and all that, with the aspartame and the sweeteners and stuff. Those are actually worse for you than processed sugar. So if you're going to eat those, you might as well just eat real cookies, right? But and
I would say probably with the exception of stevia and monk fruit, because they are derived from natural plants rather than a chemical process.
What's stevia? I've never even heard of this.
Stevia. It's a leaf, basically.
Oh, stevia, yes.
Yeah, stevia.
Okay, I guess I'll have to look into that one more. I've heard of that. I think I've seen it around, but anyway, that's why people who don't eat processed sugar do better with sickness and they don't get sick as long and stuff because their whole immune system is ready to go. It's kind of like if China invaded the United States and we only had half our military here to fight them, yeah, we could probably still fight them off, but it's going to be a lot harder and take a lot longer, right? But if our entire military is ready to go and fight off an invasion, that's ideal. So just, our listeners out there, every time you eat a candy bar, think about that. You're causing your immune system to go into defense mode and attack mode. And so when you get a real illness, it can't fight the real illness as well. But I just went off on a tangent here. I'm sorry. I probably took away from your talking time. But this is something that's passionate to me because I was so close to death a year and a half ago. And I was, I got winded walking to a mailbox, and I was just, I was bad.
Well, and I was going to say, I think that, we were talking about health in general and weight loss in general, and I think that so many people tend to overemphasize the working out aspect. And it's like when you get to a certain point and when your lifestyle is so sedentary, you're not going to want to hit the gym for 30 minutes, 45 minutes every single day. And that's not where you can make the most impactful first steps. But anyone, regardless of your size, your mobility, your limitations, you can control how you eat.
Yes.
And that can make a huge difference, especially in the beginning. Now, eventually, you and I both are going to get to a point where the exercise part is necessary to get to that final result. But at least for now, focusing on nutrition and focusing on diet and focusing on, for myself, I am just focusing on the calorie content and making sure that I'm not overeating calorie-wise. That is going to make a huge difference right now.
Now, yeah, no, you are absolutely right. I actually do exercise. I walk for about 40 minutes a day, and I do some push-ups, and I do some stomach exercises and stuff. I decided I'm going to do all body weight exercises because, I'm at an age where lifting heavy weights can be bad on my joints. But if you do body weight exercises with the same weight, it's easier on your joints. So, plus body weight exercises provides you more functional strength, like strength you can use if you have to be in a fist fight or something, right?
Right.
So, lifting weights.
Well, no, but 2 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do all of that. And so that was my point is you can focus on your nutrition no matter where your mobility is at the moment.
I could do 3 push-ups 2 years ago. 3. And they weren't even real push-ups. They were like modified push-ups against a sink or something. Now I did start building up my push-up tolerance relatively quickly. But I wanted to ask you something. Oh, have you Have you or are you planning to incorporate your health journey into your GD dynamic? Are you going to? I mean, is your husband starting to set rules for you with that regard, or do you want him to, or are you getting there? Or?
Well, oh, I'm trying to think. A couple years ago, we had a rule around just a daily activity, like an exercise something, right? And then I pinched a nerve in my shoulder, and it basically rendered me immobile. If you don't realize how many of your movements are connected to your shoulder and your rotary cuff system, it's almost everything you do from the waist up is connected to that system. And so we kind of stepped back and let me completely heal from that.
Okay. Are you there? Are you there? Okay, Aria seems to be cutting out. I'm going to pause this and then I'm going to call her back. That appears to have been a problem on my end, Aria. So anyway, go ahead, finish what you were saying.
Okay, so where did I cut off?
Your husband was letting you heal from your shoulder injury.
Oh yeah. So as of right now, I don't have any like daily activity requirements as far as our dynamic is concerned. However, we do have a dog, so she requires daily walks, and I will make my best effort to go on at least one of her walks a day. Tomorrow I have to do both of her walks just because my husband has work obligations. So that kind of takes care of that. But what we do have a part of our dynamic is my husband has set a rule that I have to keep a log of my daily diet. And so I just write everything down that I'm eating for him to basically just review and hold me accountable for. And then if I want something that is not nutritionally beneficial, something like, a little piece of chocolate or something like a bag of chips, which hardly ever happens. But if I want something like that, then I have to get his permission. And then that's just a way for him to keep track of, how much junk food am I eating? And then he can look at my log and say, yeah, you've done really well today, calorie-wise. It's okay for you to have a little something. Or he can look and say, you ate kind of heavy. I don't think you really need that. And so that's where the dynamic aspect comes in.
Have you gotten any kind of punishments on that regard, or not really, or?
Not yet. So we'll see. Things are going well.
I'm about to share a really awesome life hack with you in that regard. You want to hear what it is?
What's that?
Okay, so you mentioned chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Dark chocolate is perfectly healthy. It's actually good for you. What I do...
It's not nearly as delicious.
Oh, but here's where the life hack part comes in. And this is going to be one of the most delicious treats you'll ever taste, whether it's healthy or not. But it is healthy. But okay, so remember when I told you to buy some honey?
Uh-huh.
Okay, now the first rule, before I even get to that, when you buy honey, make sure it's made within like 100 miles of where you live. Look at the back of it. And make sure it's made at a farm and not like some corporation. Mm-hmm. These corporations add corn syrup to it, and then it's not real honey, and so on and so forth. But every store generally has at least one or two brands of honey that are locally made and are real honey. Do you go to Walmart at all?
Yeah.
Go to the candy aisle, and get yourself some Lindt, Lindt. I'll screenshot you the picture of this candy bar after we're done. Chocolate bars. Now they have a bunch of variations of it, but get you the 100% dark, 100% cocoa ones, okay? To make sure that it's all cocoa and no processed sugar, because they have some that are 85%, 55%. Don't get those. Get the 100%ers. If you want a very tasty treat with chocolate, what you do is you open up this chocolate bar and you break off a couple of the squares, like the top row of squares or whatever, and you dip those squares into honey. And my goodness, is that good. I'm telling you, the dark chocolate and honey mix is heavenly. It is one of my favorite treats that I've ever had. So that's just a suggestion for you and maybe the other listeners out there. If you want like a life hack for a healthy treat that just tastes amazing, mix some pure dark chocolate with honey once. It's it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have those little life hacks so that, like, occasionally, maybe once a week or once every few weeks, you can have something that feels a little bit more indulgent. It's not going to throw you completely off track.
Yeah, yeah. But ask your husband if he, ask his permission to try this because I'll send you a picture of this candy bar after we get off. But I this is a treat that kind of saved my life in ways. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I look forward to it all the time. But it's good to see that you're starting to take your health seriously. That's the main thing. Because you don't want to get to where I was at. And don't.
No, and even at that, my mom, she never got over. I think her highest weight was 240.
Okay.
But she started when she hit 40, because for years her doctor was like, "You're metabolically healthy. You're okay right now." And so she never really took her health seriously. And then all of a sudden she hit about 40 years old and she was diagnosed with diabetes and high blood pressure and hypertension and arthritis and just a whole laundry list of conditions. And now I think she's in her mid to late 50s at this point, and she's had 2 knee replacements, and she got weight loss surgery, so she has lost weight. But I want to avoid those things. I really want to avoid weight loss surgery because I see how it has changed the way she interacts with food forever. And I just don't want to go through that. I don't want to go through the surgery aspect. I don't want to go through the recovery aspect. And I don't want to forever have to focus on something that should at some point become less of a focus.
Yep.
Once I get it under control.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to be able to play with your grandchildren when you have grandchildren. I mean, there's just so many things. I read a few studies that say that people who eat unhealthy and people who are obese only lose like 6 years of life expectancy total, and that may be true. But the thing is, life quality, that's a whole different story. When I'm 60, I still want to have some youthful health about me, right? So I want to, when my grandkids are over, I'm going to want to play a game of basketball too with them. You know what I mean? And these are just the things that we have to think about. But we're getting close to an hour here. We're almost on 50 minutes here, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I don't know. I thought this was another great episode here. What did you think?
I did. I felt like it was a good conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been impressing me from the start, and you continue to impress, and I'm just glad to have you on this site. Now, do you have anything else you want to plug before we get off here?
Not right now, but I just want to encourage everyone that if you haven't yet, go ahead and listen to the Aria Answers segment that I did today. Give me your feedback. Follow me on Instagram and shoot me a DM if you have any feedback or anything that you want to reach out to me directly. That's at In My Proper Place. And watch out for my weekly Q&As and participate in that too.
Okay, guys, so that'll be our show for today. And Aria, of course, I always want you to stay on for a minute or two afterwards, but that'll be our show for today. And we will talk to you next week, Monday or Tuesday. And we've got some exciting subject matter lined up. So, just stay tuned. We got a really good thing going here. That's all for today, and I will see you guys next week.